Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this adorable Berry Biscuit Crochet Baby Blanket. You're gonna love this blanket as much as I do. It was so fun to make. It's made with simple double crochet and chain stitches. It's an easy 4-row repeat, but each row is super easy to remember. It can be made any size and also with any kind of yarn that you have at home. It looks complicated, but it's actually super easy, and it has this lovely vintage texture. The finished size of this blanket is 34 inches by 38 inches, or 86 centimeters by 96 centimeters. Of course, you can make yours any size that you like. The Berry Biscuit Crochet Baby Blanket also has this amazing border. That'll be coming up in a separate video, so we can mix and match our blankets and borders, or put it on whatever other blanket you like. But it will also be included in the written pattern on the website. And there's also right and left-handed versions of this tutorial. For this size blanket, I used 5 different colors, a little more than 1 skein each. If you're using one color, you'll need 6 skeins of yarn, and that works out to 1,260 meters or 1,378 yards. That's 600 grams or 21.2 ounces. To make the baby biscuit blanket, you will need yarn. I'm using 5 different colors of Softly Baby. These are 100-gram skeins. It's a 3-weight yarn, so a DK weight yarn. They are 50% acrylic and 50% polyamide. They are 100 grams, 210 meters. But of course, you're welcome to use whatever yarn you have on hand. I will be using a 5mm crochet hook with this pattern. You will also need some stitch markers and a needle for sewing in your ends and a pair of scissors. So let's get started. So we're going to start by making a slip knot, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. So make a slip knot, shrink it down, and put it onto your hook. I'm using the same hook for my chain as I am for my pattern, but just chain loosely. You don't want to chain really, really tight for your starting chain. If you do chain tightly, you can go up a hook size for your chain. So we'll chain multiples of 8. You can make yours whatever width you'd like your finished blanket to be. So to start, we're going to chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm not correcting my chain, I'm just letting it be whatever it wants to be with the hook. There's 7 and 8. So there is our 8, and I'm going to chain multiples of 8 until my chain is the width I would like my blanket to be. So pause the video and make your chain the length you want your blanket to be. For this tutorial, I'm just making a small sample. This is 3 sets of 8. So when your chain is the length you want it to be, chain 1. So now we're going to work into the 4th chain from the hook, and we're going to work into the back loops for this chain. If back loops are hard for you, you can just work into the front, it's totally fine. But if you work into the back loops, this will be the finished edge of your blanket. It'll look nice and sweet. So turning your chain over so you're looking at the back side, we're going to be working into the back loops. So there's 1, 2, 3, and here is number 4. We're going to be working right into this 4th chain from the hook and into the back loop. So we're going to make 1 double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, just working into that back loop, 1 double crochet. And this chain counts as our first double crochet, so that counts as 2 double crochets. So we're going to work making 1 double crochet into each of the next 5 back loops. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just these little camel bumps along the back. So the chain counts as our first double crochet, and the double crochet we made is our second. We want to do a total of 7, including the chain. So wrap your yarn and make 1 double crochet into each of these stitches until you have a total of 7, including your chain. So each of these back loops gets 1 double crochet. So it's fiddly, just take your time and work into each of those back loops, making 1 double crochet until you have a total of 7, including the chain. So if we count our chain, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And our starting chain looks really sweet, just like a regular chain. So both sides of our blanket will look really sweet. Chain 1, skip 1. So we're going to skip the next camel bump. We'll skip this back loop right here and work into the next. So now we're going to do 7 double crochets into our back loops, starting in the second stitch for 7 double crochets. So skip a chain and work into the next. Make 1 double crochet into each of the next 7 back loops. So here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And let's count that we have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So chain 1, skip 1, wrap your yarn, skip the next back loop, skip this camel bump right here, and start in the next stitch. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 7 stitches, chain 1, skip 1, and repeat this all the way along your chain. So at the end of your chain, you want to just make sure you go into that last camel bump to make your 7th double crochet of that set. So the bottom of your blanket will start to look like this. Chain 2 to turn, 1 and 2. If you chain tightly, you will do a chain 3. Turn your work. Our chain counts as our first double crochet, so we're going to be working into each of these stitches going along our set, and we're always going to be skipping the same spot. So we're always skipping this same area all the way up our blanket. So starting in the second stitch right here, we're going to make 1 double crochet. So wrap your yarn and into the second stitch, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into the next. So for row 2, it will always be starting this way with a chain 2 or a chain 3 if you chain loosely, and 2 double crochets. So that counts as our 3 double crochets. And now into the 4th stitch, 4 is more. So we're going to be doing a popcorn. So do 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch. Here is number 2, number 3, and number 4. Pull your loop up and your hook out and go back into the top of the 4th double crochet, or the first one that you made, right there. So poke your hook in, put that loop back on your hook, shrink it down and bring it through that stitch. Chain 1. So that finishes your popcorn. And now 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. Each of those will get 1 double crochet. So wrap your yarn and into the next stitch, 1 double crochet. And into the next 2 stitches, 1 double crochet into each. There's our last. So 3 stitches before the popcorn, and 3 stitches after. Chain 1, skip 1, so we're skipping over that chain, and 3 double crochets into each of the next 3 stitches. So wrap your yarn and into the next stitch, 1 double crochet, the stitch after that, 1 double crochet. So 3 double crochets into the first 3 stitches of that block for this 4 is more row. Wrap your yarn and 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch. There is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull your hook up and take your hook out. Put your hook into the first double crochet you made into that stitch. You can just count back 4 stitches, and you want to go right into the top, getting both of those strands of yarn on your hook. Put your loop of yarn back on your hook, shrink it down, and bring it through. Chain 1. So that finishes your popcorn, and there's our 3 stitches before. Now we're going to do our 3 stitches after. So wrap your yarn and into the next stitch, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. There's our last double crochet, and just check when you finish that set that you have 3 stitches before and 3 stitches after that popcorn. Chain 1, skip 1, so we're skipping that space, and into the next 3 stitches, 3 double crochets, 1 into each. So there's into the first, 1 double crochet, into the second, 1 double crochet, and into the third, 1 double crochet. Now into the fourth, 4 is more, so fourth stitch gets 4 double crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull your hook up. To make a big loop, take your hook out. Find the 4th stitch back. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Slide your hook in. Put that loop of yarn back on your hook. Bring that yarn through and chain 1. Now into the next 3 stitches, 1 double crochet into each. So wrap your yarn and into the first stitch after that popcorn, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet into the next, and into our chain, 1 double crochet. Just like that. So that finishes row 2. It was a little popcorn round. Our 4 is more. To start row 3, chain 2, 1, 2, turn your work. And now this row, we're just going to be doing our sets of 7. So now we're going to get it right back to being even. Again, our chain counts as our first double crochet. So we're going to be working into the second stitch. So wrap your yarn and into the second stitch, 1 double crochet. Into the next stitch, 1 double crochet. Now into the popcorn stitch, I just go right over here. It looks like we're jumping over a whole lot. Don't worry about it. Put your hook into that popcorn and make 1 double crochet. So now we have 4. Remember, our chain counts as our first double crochet. So we need to do 3 more. So 1 into each of these last 3 stitches. 1 double crochet into each. 1, 2, and 3. Now go back and check that we have 7 stitches. Our chain counts as our first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Chain 1, skip 1. We're always skipping over that same area. And 3 double crochets before the popcorn, 1 double crochet into the popcorn, and 3 double crochets after. So that will give us our 7. So 7 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So right into that popcorn, that nice space that's waiting for the hook, our 4th double crochet, and 1 into each of the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. So go back and make sure that you have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. Chain 1, skip 1. And now we're going to do our 7 double crochets into the next block. So you're going to pause the video and keep working along your blanket, making 7 double crochets into each set of stitches. 3 before the popcorn. 1 into the popcorn, and 3 after the popcorn. When you get to the end of your row, we're going to be going into that chain for our last double crochet. Remember, our chain counts as our stitch. So 1 double crochet into the top of your chain. And that finishes row 3. For row 4, start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. If you chain tightly, start with a chain 4 and turn your work. For this row, we're going to be making double crochets with a chain 1. So your chain counts as your first double crochet and chain 1. We're going to skip the second and go into the third. So wrap your yarn and into the third stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, wrap your yarn, skip a stitch, into the second stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, into the next 1 double crochet, and this is right before our space. Chain 1, jump over that space, and 1 double crochet into the stitch right after the space. Chain 1, wrap your yarn, skip 1, 1 double crochet into the second stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, 1 double crochet into the second stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, 1 double crochet right before the space. So you always want to make sure that you end up right before the space. If you don't, chances are you skipped this stitch right after the space. So just go back a little bit and make sure that you are starting and ending on each side of that space. That'll be where your mistake probably is. So chain 1, skip over the space, and 1 double crochet right into the stitch after that space. So pause the video and keep working along your blanket, making 1 double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and 1 double crochet. All the way along your blanket, making sure you have a double crochet on each side of that space, going all the way along your row. At the end of your row, chain 1, we're going to skip 1, which is our last real double crochet, and we're going to work right into that chain. So I'm just working into the top of my chain 2, or you might work into the top of your chain 3. I find the chain 2 gives a straighter edge for me. So wrap your yarn and into the top of that chain 2, 1 double crochet. So that finishes row 4. So now we're going to go back and do row 1 again, but this is how it's going to repeat for the rest of the blanket. So start with a loose chain 2 or a tight chain 3, depending how you crochet. Turn your work, and now we're going to go back and make our 7 stitches into our space. We're going to start our block again. So wrap your yarn and into the space, 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into the stitch. 1 double crochet into the space, 1 double crochet into the stitch, 1 double crochet into the space, and now we have our same spot where we always want to skip. We'll make our last double crochet into the double crochet before that space. So here is your 7th double crochet, and again, go ahead and count. Make sure that you have 7, including that chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Chain 1, skip 1, and we're going to do our next block over here. So 7 double crochets, starting and ending right before the space. So into the first stitch after that space, 1 double crochet. Into the space, 1 double crochet. Into the stitch, 1 double crochet. And into the space, 1 double crochet. Into the stitch, 1 double crochet. Into the space, 1 double crochet. And into the last stitch before that, and into the last stitch, 1 double crochet. So make sure you have 7. It will start looking like this. chain 1, skip the space, and make your next 7 double crochets. So pause the video and keep working along your blanket, making 1 double crochet into the stitch and 1 into the space to build back your set of 7 stitches. 1 into the space, 1 into the stitch, all the way along until you get to the end of your row. At the end of your row, we're going to go into the space and make 1 double crochet into the space where that chain is, and you'll make your last double crochet into the chain. 1 double crochet into the chain. And now go back and count again. Make sure you have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now we're going to start row 2, which is our 4 is more round. So start with a chain 2, 1, 2, nice and loose, or a chain 3 if you chain tightly. And turn your work. So this is our popcorn round, our 4 is more. So 1 double crochet into the second stitch, 1 double crochet into the third, and 4 is more. So into the 4th stitch, 4 double crochets, all into the same stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch of that set. Now go back into the top of your first double crochet into that stitch. Put your hook in, loop back on, and popcorn. So bring it through and chain 1 to secure. Now 3 double crochets into the next 3 stitches. So same as we did down below. 1, 2, and 3. Now an easy way to keep track of these stitches, or where your spaces where you're going to skip, is to just put a little stitch marker in each of those spaces. And that'll just kind of remind you that you're not going to crochet into that spot. And you can keep moving these up for your whole pattern until you have a good sense of skipping that stitch, or skipping every 8th stitch. So to skip over, chain 1, wrap your yarn and skip over into that next stitch. 1 double crochet into each of the first 3 stitches. Here's my 3rd. And 4 is more. So wrap your yarn and 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull your hook up and take your hook out. Put your hook into the first double crochet that you made into that stitch. Right there is our first double crochet we made. Loop of yarn back on your hook, bring your yarn through, and chain 1 to secure that popcorn. Now into the next 3 stitches, 1 double crochet into each. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're back at our space where our stitch marker is, so chain 1 and skip that space, 1 double crochet into the next stitch. So you're going to keep going like this, making 3 double crochets before the popcorn. 4 is more, so popcorn into the 4th stitch, 4 double crochets into the 4th stitch, and then make a popcorn out of it. 3 double crochets after, chain 1, skip 1, and repeat all the way along your row. At the end of our row, I've done my 2 double crochets, and always remember to work into your chain for your last stitch. Always into the chain. So there is our 3rd double crochet after your popcorn. And now we're going to go back and do row 3, which is just putting back our 7 stitches. So chain 2 if you chain loosely, or chain 3 if you are a tight chainer. And now we're going to go back and put our 7 stitches back into our blocks. So wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into each of these stitches. So when you start, there is 2 before the popcorn, because our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. And then into our popcorn, just into that space, 1 double crochet, and 3 double crochets after our popcorn. Chain 1, skip 1 to get over our space, and 7 double crochets into the next set. So 3 before the popcorn, 1 into the popcorn, and 3 after. If your stitch count goes off and you only have 2 stitches before the popcorn that look like stitches, you can just work 1 into the beginning of that popcorn and also work 1 into the regular spot of the popcorn. So that's a little cheat. If your popcorn stitch count gets a little weird, you can always make an extra stitch in the top of that. So I've done 3, so the 4th one into the popcorn, and 3 after the popcorn. So you're going to keep going like this all the way along this row, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. Making 1 double crochet into each stitch, and chaining 1, skipping 1 when you get to that space, and starting right in that very next double crochet. So each set gets 7 double crochets, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. At the end of the row, you'll see I have 6 double crochets done. Always remember to go into that chain. So wrap your yarn and into the chain, 1 double crochet, and then go back and count. Make sure you have your 7 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now go back and do your chain round, or your little bridges. So chain 3 loosely, 1, 2, 3, or chain 4 if you are a tight chainer. Turn your work and skip the first stitch, go into the second. We're just going to make our little bridges going all the way along. This is a good time to move up your stitch markers so they're on the row down below, your finished biscuit row. Get those stitch markers ready. And now you'll know when you get to those stitch markers, that is where you need to make a double crochet before, chain 1, skip 1, and make a double crochet right after. So that's where you're going to be paying attention, and keep going along doing 1 double crochet, chain 1, skip 1. So keep working along this row, doing your double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, making sure you start and finish on each side of that space. Each side of your stitch marker needs a double crochet. So it'll be looking like that, all the way along to the end of this row. At the end of your row, your last double crochet goes into your chain to pull up that side and give you a nice straight edge. To change your color, you'll do it at the end of your box row or your bridge row. So I've done my chain 1. I'm going to start my double crochet into the top of that chain. So wrap my yarn and take off 2, leaving the rest of it on my hook. Hold your tail down on the back of your work and get your new yarn, loop of yarn on your hook, and bring that through. Drop your tail. So now I'm holding 2 tails along the back of my work. Kind of shrink everything down so it looks great, and then start your pattern. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. And now you'll just keep going with your new yarn color just like you were before. So that's how we'll be changing our yarn, and then you can just go back after and tie these ends a little bit and weave them in to each side so your colors match. And that is an easy way to change your color for this pattern. So now keep going until your blanket is the height you'd like it to be. When your blanket is the height you want it to be, just finish your last double crochet into that chain and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. Bring your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel just by clicking that button down below if you haven't already, and the notification bell beside that so you don't miss out on any more fun projects just like this. I'd love to see your finished blanket. You can follow me over on Instagram at Secret Yarnery or our Facebook page, The Secret Yarnery. There's also a Facebook group, The Secret Yarnery Crochet Community, and you can also find me over on Pinterest at Secret Yarnery. So thanks so much for hooking along. I hope you have a super great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay hooked.